Jane Velez Mitchell for Jane Unchained Live here at the Boycott Meat Weekly Roundtable. We've got some breaking news from Los Angeles. Elmira Tanner, you are with Direct Action Everywhere, and you guys, wow, I'm going to show the video of the undercover investigation that you conducted in a second, but tell us, what are you doing today vis-a-vis the killing facility where thousands of pigs are killed in downtown, right outside downtown Los Angeles?
Yeah, thanks, Jane. I have been at Farmer John Slaughterhouse, Smithfield's Farmer John Slaughterhouse in Los Angeles since about 9 o'clock yesterday morning. I'm right outside the slaughterhouse now, and we have been bearing witness to the pigs, doing outreach to the workers, and generally raising awareness about all of the awful things that happen to animals and humans inside of this facility. And this is on the heels of an investigation that we did that we believe is the first time undercover footage has ever been obtained from inside Farmer John Slaughterhouse. Activists were in there a couple days ago attempting to rescue a pig moments before slaughter. Unfortunately, Smithfield prevented them from doing that, but the activists were able to retrieve a hidden camera that has over 80 hours of footage from inside the kill floor at Farmer John Slaughterhouse here in Los Angeles.
And now I understand some activists were arrested, correct?
Yes, 7 activists were arrested while they were attempting this rescue, and they were cited and released and are currently facing trespass charges.
Okay, we're going to play the video. Warning, there are graphic moments, but it plays like a spy movie. It's truly extraordinary. And before we do that, we want to say that we do invite Smithfield, which is, by the way, owned by a Chinese conglomerate. It's not an American-owned company anymore. We invite Smithfield on any time to respond to anything said here or said on the video. This is not our video. This is a Direct Action Everywhere video that was just released. It was covered in the Los Angeles Times and City News Service and other news outlets. Watch, and then we will weigh in.
You guys.
Like, I don't want to make you guys feel like you're like hardcore criminals, but you're not. But it's just part of our procedures.
Whoa, that was extraordinary. Let's go to our roundtable and get some reaction. Elmira Tanner outside Farmer John's. Joe Enriquez Henry, what do you say?
It's
Looking
terrible,
at that.
terrible. This should not be happening. This is a perfect reason to just focus on plant-based food, not be slaughtering animals of any kind, any nature. But we need to stop this. We need to boycott meat.
Judy Mancuso, social compassion and legislation, your reaction.
Well, it's sickening and it's disturbing, and I'm so glad I've been vegan over 30 years, and people feel that they have to continue to eat these animals, and they don't, and everyone is better off for it. And these pigs are smarter than the family dog, and to see what we're doing to them, when if it was a dog, it would be anti-cruelty and you could be convicted, but yet it's okay to cause the same pain and agony to a farm animal. There just shouldn't be, different rules for the different species.
And of course, we're talking about this also from the perspective of human health. The meat packing plants, which are really killing facilities, to call them meat packing plants sound like you're going to put a steak in a valise and go on vacation. They're killing facilities, as you just saw. They have been declared under the government essential laws as essential industries, when indeed they are leading to the underlying conditions that actually are more likely to result in death if you get COVID-19. Specifically, I'm talking about heart disease, obesity, and cancer. Processed meat is officially cancer causing, and hot dogs and bacon is what comes out of that facility is cancer causing. Again, we invite Smithfield to come on anytime to discuss this. So, Elmira, I know you've got so much to do because you're organizing this giant event right now outside Smithfield. Did you get any response from Smithfield?
We didn't get any response directly ourselves. There's PR person who does typically respond to our investigations and our actions did provide a statement to the news service, basically calling us extremists and that we have this radical agenda. But I don't think that it is a radical agenda to want a better world for everyone, to want workers to not have to be subjected to unfair conditions, to not want animals to be abused. This is actually something that a lot of people want. And I think right now the writing is on the wall. People are realizing how awful these corporations are. And I think, again, in the news, Smithfield, responsible for the death of workers, over 250 workers at this slaughterhouse have been infected with COVID. And so far, the only fine that they have paid is about $13,000, which is just, an insult to all of the animals and all of the workers who are suffering at the hands of this company and other companies like it across the country.
Last question. What are you going to do? You said you got 80 hours of footage. When are we going to see the other many hours?
So someone now has the really unfortunate job, Jane, of going through that footage, which is obviously really traumatic to watch. And we will probably be editing it and releasing some of it, throughout the next days and weeks. So keep your eye out for that. But I've seen some of it, and it is, it's just awful. It's the same. It's this one worker over and over again, every 5 to 10 seconds, stabbing a pig in the throat repeatedly. And that is their entire job. And the line just keeps coming. And this happens, I believe, 5 to 6 days a week here. And this is just one slaughterhouse, and it's not even Smithfield's largest slaughterhouse. So just shows you how huge and systematic the problem is. But I do believe that we can do something and end it for good.
I want to thank you, Elmira Tanner with Direct Action Everywhere. They are a nonprofit based in Berkeley, California, but they have chapters all around the world. Wow, what mind-blowing. In fact, I think you've been, your organization has been ruled to be one of the top threats to the meat industry. I guess you take that as a compliment. We know Definitely. You have to go, so we're going to let you go, but thank you for that report from the scene. of a killing facility. I don't even want to say slaughterhouse anymore, a pig killing facility right outside downtown Los Angeles, 5 or 10 minutes from the Staples Center. Now let's go on to a couple of other breaking news stories that are happening here that are so really extraordinary that we're going to bring them to you here on the Boycott Meat Roundtable. Let's check out what MSNBC Rachel Maddow show found, essentially that the CDC, which normally issues very, very strong guidelines, do this, do that, do this, according to MSNBC's exclusive reporting, watered down guidelines as it pertains to a Smithfield plant in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And here's exactly what this is on the Rachel Maddow show from April, but she's been doing updates on this as exclusive reports, basically making the case that the CDC intentionally watered down its guidelines when it came to the slaughterhouses.
The CDC did get called in to do one of their famous EPI-AIDS investigations at one of these meat plants, at one of the first worst outbreaks, the Smithfield plant outbreak in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. CDC got called in to investigate what happened here and to tell them what to do. But something hinky appears to have happened there. You remember just a few minutes ago the kind of language I described from the other CDC EPI-AIDS reports on other public health disasters that they've investigated, right? They don't tend to mince their words in terms of what they tell people to do. For some reason, there's a whole lot of very un-CDC language throughout this report. I mean, it just flat out says, quote, "These recommendations are discretionary and are not required or mandated by CDC." What? Look at this, quote, "Consider the following actions to physically separate employees." Consider the following actions? Just think about it. Portable hand washing facilities could be utilized. Oh, they could they? Stagger shifts, start times, and break times as much as feasible. Yeah, but Smithfield, don't knock yourself out. If it's not feasible, of course, we understand.
So what is your reaction, Judy? I know you've been following this. And Judy, you are the president of Social Compassion and Legislation, which has passed an untold number of bills benefiting the environment and animals. The Cruelty-Free Cosmetics Act is one of your big ones, just to mention one of many.
Well, Smithfield's lobbyists did a great job, is what I have to say. You know, this is par for the course. So when in industry, when someone is about to clamp down on an industry, then their lobbyists, executives, whoever has the relationships where they need them, in this case, the CDC, goes over these guidelines. So they were probably given that first draft of guidelines, and they literally changed the document, right? You put it in Word, you can put track changes on, and that's probably exactly what happened, because that's how we all work. And they then changed it to be passive, and those shall utilize, shall do this, turned into may, could, all this passive language that in the end, they don't have to change anything they're doing, which, as we know, has cost many lives, many people who have gotten COVID that have recovered, and others who have died. I've watched all the footage on Rachel Maddow, and this is just lobbying as lobbying goes, Jane. And to hell with it if it means animals' lives, people's lives. It just shows you who these corporations really are.
Now, Joe Enriquez Henry, you are the president of Forward Latino. You come at this from a labor perspective. If true, and certainly seems like the documentation's right there, the CDC, funded by our tax dollars, is watering down recommendations that could save the lives of people in this country to benefit a company that is owned by a foreign conglomerate. It's a Chinese-owned company. What do you make of that?
Well, this is terrible. By the way, Vice President for Latino, but this is placing profit before people's health. Here we have these companies, multinational, Smithfield, ran by an overseas corporation, China, placing their profits in front of workers. We know the demand overseas for pork is extremely high. That's the Smithfield plant here and many other Smithfield facilities. We cannot allow this to continue. That's why it's so important for us to do this boycott. These corporations have, for a very long time, for the last 30 to 40 years, have placed the priority of making money before workers and consumers. So we have to stop this.
Well, as I say about climate change, if it's too hot to walk across the street, nobody's making any money. And you can see the economic fallout from this zoonotic disease that jumped from animals to humans. That is another example of how there is blowback against humans, against our species, when we abuse animals. Now, speaking of COVID, check out this headline. This is Reuters, and we also got this from Bloomberg. U.S. to research transmission of COVID-19 in beef supply chain. The U.S. Department of Agriculture is funding a $1 million research project to identify how the virus that causes COVID-19 might be transmitted in the nation's beef supply chain, from cattle on the farm to the packages of meat inside a person's refrigerator. Now, they are not saying, Judy, that there is any definite connection, but the fact that they're researching it is quite alarming, in the sense that they're not saying it can't be transmitted either.
Well, they're not saying that. And maybe this is just what domino needs to fall in order to end climate change. All the talk has been on climate change with fires in California right now. And the only thing that gets discussed is cars emitting with their emissions and doing away with cars. But as we learned from the United Nations report, the big agriculture and raising animals for slaughter for human consumption is right up there with the transportation sector. But nobody seems to ever want to talk about that. And, as soon as COVID hit, Donald Trump was signing orders to hurry up and get those plants back online. To hell with the people that were getting COVID and dying, that he ordered them to get online ASAP. Why? Well, he also has restaurants and hotels he was wanting to open up where they're serving this meat and where he's eating it along with the others. So it's just it's a bad chain reaction. And so maybe this newest finding about COVID being passed on.
They're researching it. They're researching it. Okay. They're doing a project to identify how the virus that causes COVID-19 might be transmitted in the nation's beef supply chain, from cattle on the farm to the packages of meat inside a person's refrigerator. They're not saying definite, but I will say this. To read the article a little bit more, it says, while there is no evidence the virus spreads through food or food packaging, quote, that really doesn't mean we shouldn't study this just to make sure that we understand how the virus behaves throughout the distribution system, says former NIFA director on a USDA radio program. The research is also ramping up as China, the world's top meat importer, halts food imports from companies if their products or packaging tested positive for the virus. Thousands of meatpacking workers in North America and Brazil have contracted coronavirus. So what I take away from this is that there's a lot we don't know about how this virus is transmitted. And we know that there were previous reports that containers filled with seafood arrived in China from Latin America, and they had COVID inside the containers. So it's something that we really should find out about. And there seems to be this direct connection, between COVID and slaughter, COVID and meat packing. We know it's a hotbed, and frankly, with the CDC watering down the guidelines, there's a potential for more problems, not just, Joe, for the slaughterhouse workers, which is a tragedy in itself, but potentially for consumers.
Right. So here we are, communities. We have Chernobyls. That's what these plants are becoming in those communities. And so we go from 500,000 plus plants to 500,000 slaughterhouse workers to now food service workers, communities across the country. Here we are, over 200,000 deaths across the country. Millions have been infected. So it's not stopping. And again, going back to the slaughterhouses in the communities and where they're located, we have some of the highest amount of infections and deaths occurring. Where I'm at in Iowa, we're one of the highest per capita when it comes to deaths due to COVID. So clearly the information's out there, the reality's out there. Hospitals are reporting more deaths. So we have to stop it with more education and, again, the boycott.
Yeah. And so, we look at the high-speed slaughter lines. Some of the recommendations that the CDC, in their very genteel way, after it was watered down, suggested if you slow the line down, that would allow for more potential social distancing. It doesn't matter what you're killing. If you've got to kill every 10 seconds, the people are going to be cramped together more than if, let's say, there was a minute between each killing of a pig. So the high-speed slaughter is an area where you have a commonality between the interests of people who are working at these slaughterhouses and the animal welfare, because the faster the slaughter happens, the more cruel it is, even though it's unbelievably cruel right now. So what's the solution moving forward, Judy? Obviously, this is, at the end of the day, a consumer issue. The truth is that if people didn't buy these products, there wouldn't be any need for any of this conversation. We wouldn't be having it because people would be eating Beyond Meat or Impossible Foods or Gardein or Tofurkey or any of those other meat alternatives. And gee, how about just plain old vegetables and grains and nuts? How about some oatmeal for breakfast instead of a ham and egg sandwich, which is a cholesterol bomb? So isn't the solution really for people to wake up how the meat industry, through climate change, through health problems that they're experiencing, heart disease, cancer, through pandemics, again, this COVID first cropped up at a slaughter market in China. All of it is a tremendously negative influence on now globally human life.
Well, the solution has to come from a lot of places. I mean, ultimately, if everybody woke up tomorrow and said, yeah, those vegans and the doctors and all the climatologists are right, and we need to stop eating meat, and I'm just going to give it up, that would be the best case scenario. But that's not going to happen. So you have to approach it from every angle. And one of the angles, which, as you know, my group is involved in, is creating laws. And it's just not okay during this pandemic for them to keep these line speeds up. The line speeds are cruel and horrendous on a normal day. But while these employees should be social distancing, so there has to be laws. And if there's not the will from our elected officials to create these laws and surpass the lobbyists for Smithfields, then we need to get new leadership. And we have an election coming up, and we need for everyone that cares about human life, animal life, to get to the polls and to vote in new leadership, because the existing leadership obviously has failed horribly at this pandemic, and the proof is before us everywhere.
Joe, let me ask you this. We've been doing these boycott meat roundtables for several months now. Are you sensing any kind of change, any kind of feedback, any kind of groups joining that would have commonality with our movement? For example, I know you come at it from a labor movement. I come at it from animal rights, human health, climate change mitigation and reversal. Judy comes from many of those same angles. Yeah, the same.
Right.
Yeah. So are you sensing in the labor side? So often, people will say we need to improve the conditions of the workers, but I'm going to have my steak. I'm going to eat that hamburger. And, we have to wonder, can you have it both ways? Or are you essentially supporting the oppressor?
Well, Jane, good question. I mean, we are, from what we're seeing, is there's more groups that are getting involved. Farmers are getting involved. Livestock farmers understand the need to change things in production, although they may not be with us when it comes to animals. They're definitely with us when it comes to changing the way in which production is done. That, of course, that is not enough. We have workplace safety. So that is with labor unions, worker rights groups. So that these different groups are coming at it in a different way. They're coming at it with safety, with taking ownership back for the farmers, to promoting laws which would get rid of these vertical integration type of facilities across the country. So there are those discussions, but on top of that, we have now over 1,000 supporters for our Boycott Meat campaign, just connecting with us on our website. But lots of communication going on out there, lots of education, even on TikTok, which is a kind of a new social media platform. So many things are going on, lots of discussion, different ways of discussing this issue with farmers and worker rights groups. So I'm hopeful, but when we talk about this, what we have to do at the end of the day is we have to do the consumer boycott. That is the only way in which we're going to really create havoc within these corporations. If we reduce the amount of their product being bought at the stores, and with the vigilant efforts of the animal rights groups that's going on right now, and also worker right groups happening at facilities across the country, we can change the way in which things are done and hopefully move to a plant-based system. So I have hope. I see a lot happening every week with this education, with what you're doing, with what we're doing, and again, with what the other groups are doing.
And, I want to bring it back to, for us, the animals. It's one of our key concerns. And if you look at this assembly line, people don't like to think about where their meat comes from, but this is it. And you just saw it in the direct action everywhere, undercover investigation, and they're going to be releasing more footage. These animals don't want to die. And we're talking about pigs today because that was the undercover investigation. And pigs have been very much demonized in our society. If you want to insult somebody, you call them a pig, which is actually a form of speciesism. It's a form of hate speech that's directed, that involves animals. And that sounds silly. People like to make fun of it, but it's true. Our language is important. And I just want to bring us back to who pigs really are. Again, as you mentioned, Judy Mancuso, they are smarter than your household dog or cat by far. They have the emotional and intellectual development of toddler children, and they are really very gentle and sweet animals. All animals pretty much are. But let's take a look at how a baby pig really looks, because when these pigs are slaughtered, they're only 6 months old after their mothers have been forcibly impregnated and then they have been ripped away from their mothers and then fattened up in tiny enclosures and then taken on a ride. The only time often they see the sky is on the ride to the slaughterhouse with no food or water. But let's look at an actual pig who is not being tortured.
Say, I'm clean. I'm clean. Sleepy eyes. Now it's bedtime. Night night. Night night.
I'm about to join you in there.
All right. Wow. Is that powerful or what? Let's do last final thoughts.
Well, it looks like a sweet, cuddly little animal and deserves to have a wonderful life and not be treated like a commodity that doesn't have those feelings and can feel pain. My group rescued 2 pigs earlier this year from slaughter. 2 little boys raised them for their 4-H club. And when it came time to send them to slaughter, they had second thoughts and reached out to the rescue world. And we stepped up and found them their forever home and made a donation of over $5,000 for them to go to their forever home. So, yeah, when people get to know them, when they get to see what they really are like, and they don't see what's inside these slaughterhouses. And for DXE and these folks to put themselves on the line, get arrested to get in there and get this footage, I mean, it really is the only light of day that is shined on these killing facilities that people will ever see. Otherwise, I mean, it is closed off to the world. And when people see it, they change their mind. So it's mission critical that they do these things. I personally could never do what they're doing. But thank goodness that they're bold enough to bring it to the public.
If there's nothing wrong with it, why do the industries fight so hard to prevent people from seeing it? Joe, your final thoughts?
Boycott meat. Do it for the sake of the animals, for the sake of the workers, the environment. When you're in your grocery store, go to the meat section, go to the butcher, tell them why you want to boycott meat. Join the boycott, boycottmeat.com. Make a contribution. Join with us.
And as we sign off, I'm going to play once again the compilation under 3 minutes, direct action everywhere, just in the last few days. Went undercover into the Smithfield Slaughterhouse here in downtown LA, and they almost got out with a pig.
I don't want to make you guys feel like you're like hardcore members because you're not, but it's just part of our procedures.
Incredibly powerful video. Smithfield, you are invited on anytime, either you here in the United States or your bosses in China. This is a Chinese-owned company. Amazing, amazing. Please share this video out and go to boycottmeat.com to join the boycott meat movement. As that video said, the time has come. Thank you so much, Judy Mancuso of Social Compassion and Legislation,
Thank you,
Joe Enriquez Henry of Forward Latino. Thank you for joining us for this broadcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.